That figure of 180 represents my neighbor's fasting glucose reading the morning after consuming a vegetable dinner his physician labeled healthy. An alarming 240 was reached because of a single vegetable that is likely sitting on your counter at this very moment. I intend to reveal the 7 specific vegetables that surge blood glucose quicker than candy, ranked from concerning to severe. The top vegetable featured on this list actually elevates blood sugar levels significantly higher than a sugary glazed donut does. Your healthcare provider likely encouraged you to consume more greens, yet they failed to mention this crucial detail. Please leave a comment stating, "I deserve the truth," if you believe vital health insights should be accessible and free for all. You should also forward this video to every senior citizen who requires this life-saving knowledge immediately. Only high-level executives at supplement firms and those benefiting from your confusion will refuse to comment or share this. What I am preparing to disclose could spare you from higher medication doses, nerve injury, and years of needless glucose spikes. Make sure you stay until the end because the #1 vegetable is not only surprising, it is likely what you ate last night. Here is what is occurring internally within your body right now that practically nobody discusses openly. Not every vegetable is grown equally, as some are loaded with starch that your system digests faster than refined sugar. White potatoes specifically possess an incredibly high glycemic load that can impact your metabolic health severely. Consequently, a simple baked potato has the potential to spike blood glucose levels even higher than a glazed donut. Allow me to simplify this concept so you understand exactly how your digestion processes these starchy foods. When you consume starchy plants, your digestive system rapidly converts them into glucose within a very short window. Within just 15 to 30 minutes, that resulting glucose inundates your bloodstream, causing a rapid physiological reaction. Your pancreas effectively panics and releases a massive amount of insulin to manage the sudden influx. However, after age 60, your cells become about 70% less responsive to insulin signals. Therefore, that excess glucose merely remains in your blood, slowly damaging every single tissue it contacts. It begins harming your nerve endings, your kidneys, your sensitive vision, and your cardiovascular system. What truly frightens me is that physicians are instructing diabetics to consume more vegetables without proper nuance. They are not explaining that starchy vegetables are statistically associated with a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Unlike non-starchy options which provide protective benefits, they are grouping all vegetables together carelessly. They act as if leafy spinach and starchy potatoes produce the exact same metabolic effect on your body. They simply do not have the same impact, and this distinction is vital for your health. The medical community will tell you to reduce food intake, exercise often, and track your carbohydrates. However, they are failing to inform you that specific vegetables are undermining your blood sugar management every single day. This sabotage is entirely preventable, but you must first comprehend which vegetables are causing the issue. Before we discuss the solutions, you need to know the metric that changes your entire approach. The glycemic index calculates precisely how rapidly a specific food item spikes your blood sugar levels. A low score is under 55, a medium score is 55 to 69, and high is anything 70 or above. Most individuals incorrectly assume that all vegetables automatically fall into the low glycemic category. They are mistaken, as some vegetables actually score higher than cake, soda, and foods you have avoided for years. When you consume these high glycemic vegetables, particularly at night, your blood sugar remains elevated for hours. This prolonged elevation triggers inflammation, harms your blood vessels, and progressively worsens your diabetes condition. However, this is where the situation becomes critical, as not all starchy vegetables affect you identically. Some are manageable if you prepare them correctly, while others should probably be avoided entirely. A select few will ruin your blood sugar management regardless of what precautions you take. I have spent months analyzing clinical trials regarding vegetable glycemic indexes and consulting with endocrinologists. I have reviewed decades of research and am ranking 7 vegetables for you right now. We are starting with the ones that are merely bad and building toward the one that is a metabolic catastrophe. Vegetable number 7 is corn. So let us begin with an item that catches most people off guard. Yes, technically corn is classified as a grain, but the majority of people consume it as a vegetable side dish. The issue here is that corn is incredibly sweet and starchy, meaning it is best eaten in very small amounts. A single cup of corn holds roughly 31 grams of carbohydrates, which is a significant load for diabetics. To give you a comparison, that is actually more carbohydrates than you would find in 2 slices of white bread. The glycemic index of sweet corn sits between 52 and 60, depending on how it is prepared. That places it squarely in the medium glycemic category, but here is why it remains problematic. Most individuals do not consume just half a cup of corn. They eat an entire cob, which equals 1 cup. That equals 31 grams of fast-digesting carbohydrates hitting your bloodstream all at one time. Furthermore, the way corn is usually cooked and served makes the health impact even worse. When boiled with butter, you are adding fat that slows digestion slightly. But you still receive that massive carb load. Grilled corn presents the same problem, and canned corn is even worse because it frequently contains added sugars. The biological mechanism is straightforward because corn is composed mostly of starch. Your digestive enzymes break that starch down into glucose rapidly, causing a surge in your system. Within 30 minutes of eating corn, your blood sugar is climbing rapidly, especially for seniors. For someone over 60 with reduced insulin sensitivity, that climb can be chemically significant. Here is my professional take. Corn is not the worst vegetable on this list, but it is certainly not innocent. If you decide to eat corn, limit yourself to a quarter cup strictly as a side dish. Treat it as a garnish rather than a main vegetable, and pair it with protein and fat to slow the glucose spike. Never eat it alone or rely on it as your primary vegetable source during a meal. Score: 4 out of 10, meaning it has a moderate impact and is manageable with strict portion control. Vegetable number 6 is green peas, bringing us to vegetables people assume are safe due to their color. Green peas fall into this deceptive category because they appear healthy and are recommended in many diets. However, they are concealing a carbohydrate bomb that can disrupt your glucose levels unexpectedly. Green peas are significantly higher in carbohydrates than the vast majority of other green vegetables. 1 cup of cooked green peas contains approximately 21 grams of carbohydrates and 8 grams of sugar. The glycemic index of green peas ranges from 48 to 54, placing them in the low-medium category. The issue is that people eat peas by the cupful in casseroles, rice dishes, and pasta blends. Those carbohydrates accumulate rapidly, and the sugar content in peas is surprisingly high for a vegetable. That sugar is absorbed quickly by the body, contributing heavily to the overall glucose spike. Research indicates that while peas have fiber to slow digestion, the carbohydrate load remains significant. This is enough to negatively affect blood sugar, especially in individuals diagnosed with diabetes or prediabetes. Here is what most people fail to realize when they add peas to their dinner plate. When you eat peas in a starchy meal like rice or pasta, you are stacking carbohydrates upon carbohydrates. Your blood sugar does not just spike in this scenario, it absolutely surges. The verdict is that green peas are not as harmful as upcoming items, but they are not a free pass. If you love peas, limit yourself to a quarter cup per meal and always pair them with protein. Score: 5 out of 10, denoting a moderate glycemic impact that is easily overconsumed by accident. Vegetable number 5 is butternut squash, a winter squash beloved by the health-conscious community. These squashes are nutrient-dense and delicious, often recommended by nutritionists for general health. However, they possess a hidden problem for diabetics that is rarely discussed in standard advice. 1 cup of cooked butternut squash holds about 22 grams of carbohydrates and 4 grams of sugar. The glycemic index of butternut squash is around 51, placing it in the medium category. It is not terrible, but it is certainly not great for someone managing insulin resistance. Here is what makes butternut squash particularly problematic for your specific health needs. It is sweet, and that sweetness comes from natural sugars that are absorbed relatively quickly. Because it is often pureed into soups or roasted until soft, the cooking process breaks down cellular structures. This makes the starches even more digestible, increasing the speed at which glucose enters your blood. When butternut squash is cooked until very soft or pureed, the glycemic load increases significantly. Pumpkin, though rich in nutrients, also displays a high glycemic index when overcooked or pureed. The same biological principle applies to butternut squash, affecting how your body processes the meal. Research on winter squashes shows that while they provide valuable nutrients, their impact on blood sugar is real. For people with diabetes, this impact is significant enough to warrant serious caution and limitation. But here's the bigger issue. Butternut squash is frequently served in very large portions. A bowl of butternut squash soup can easily contain 2 to 3 cups of pureed squash. That equals 44 to 66 grams of carbohydrates in one single sitting. For someone trying to control blood sugar, that amount is an absolute metabolic disaster. My recommendation is that if you eat butternut squash, limit yourself to half a cup maximum. Keep it firm rather than overcooked, and pair it with plenty of protein and healthy fat. Never eat it pureed in large quantities if you want to keep your levels stable. Score 5.5 out of 10, indicating a medium glycemic load that becomes dangerous in large servings. Vegetable number 4 is beets, and we are now entering territory where vegetables become major problems. Beets are often recommended for their nitrates and cardiovascular benefits, which are indeed real. However, while they possess those benefits, they also come with a steep blood sugar cost. Beets contain natural sugars that may raise glucose levels significantly if not properly balanced. 1 cup of cooked beets contains about 17 grams of carbohydrates and 14 grams of sugar. That is an incredibly high sugar content for a vegetable, rivaling some fruits. The glycemic index of beets is around 64, placing them in the medium to high category. That number does not tell the whole story, as the sugar in beets is primarily sucrose. Sucrose gets broken down and absorbed quickly, leading to rapid changes in blood chemistry. Clinical experience shows that diabetics who eat beets often see significant spikes within 45 minutes. Because beets are often eaten as juice or in large roasted quantities, the load becomes problematic. Here's what makes beets particularly dangerous for the average consumer trying to stay healthy. They are marketed as a superfood, leading people to think they can eat unlimited amounts. People assume that because they are natural and full of antioxidants, the sugar does not count. However, that sugar content does not disappear just because the beets have other beneficial compounds. The way beets are typically consumed makes the situation even worse for your glucose management. Beet juice is essentially pure concentrated sugar with all the protective fiber removed. Pickled beets often have added sugar on top of the natural sugar already present. Roasting beets concentrates the sugars even more, making them hit your bloodstream faster. The verdict is that beets have benefits, but for diabetics, they are a risky choice. If you eat them, limit yourself to a quarter cup of cooked beets only. Never drink beet juice, and always pair the vegetable with protein and fat. Score: 6.5 out of 10, reflecting high natural sugar content and significant glycemic impact. Vegetable number 3 is sweet potatoes, and this is where people often get upset with me. Sweet potatoes are beloved by the health community and recommended in almost every diabetes diet article. Nutritionists praise them, and doctors suggest them as a safer alternative to white potatoes. However, the truth that nobody wants to admit is that sweet potatoes are still a blood sugar problem. They are simply a smaller problem than white potatoes, but a problem nonetheless. A baked sweet potato is still on the high end of the medium range of the glycemic index. Their index ranges from 44 to 94 depending on the variety and cooking method used. One medium sweet potato contains about 27 grams of carbohydrates and over 5 grams of sugar. Here's what people do not realize about the different varieties available in the grocery store. The orange ones that everyone loves tend to have higher glycemic indexes than white or purple varieties. Research shows that sweet potatoes still cause measurable blood sugar increases in people with diabetes. A study examining glucose responses found that sweet potatoes raised blood sugar significantly. While not as dramatic as russet potatoes, the spike was still very real and measurable. Here is the preparation trap that makes this vegetable even more dangerous for your health. Most people do not just eat a plain sweet potato, they add sweet toppings. At Thanksgiving, they add marshmallows, or they drizzle honey on top for dinner. Even mashing them with butter and brown sugar is common, compounding the glycemic impact. Even without additions, a large baked sweet potato can deliver up to 50 grams of carbohydrates. That is more than 3 slices of bread worth of carbs in a single vegetable serving. For someone over 60 trying to manage diabetes, that is enough to spike blood sugar into the 200s. The verdict is that sweet potatoes are better than white potatoes, but that does not make them safe. If you are going to eat them, choose smaller ones and keep portions to a quarter potato. Always pair them with significant amounts of protein and fat to blunt the spike. Score: 7 out of 10, due to a medium-high glycemic index and deceptive marketing. Vegetable number 2 is parsnips, a vegetable that flies completely under the radar. Most people have never heard that parsnips are a massive blood sugar problem. They look like white carrots and are often used innocently in soups and stews. They seem harmless, but they are absolutely not safe for a diabetic diet. Parsnips have a glycemic index of approximately 97, which is shockingly high. That is higher than white bread, higher than donuts, and higher than most desserts. 1 cup of cooked parsnips contains about 27 grams of carbohydrates, primarily as starch and sugar. The reason parsnips are so problematic lies in their physical structure and composition. They are a root vegetable that is almost entirely starch, which converts to sugar rapidly. When cooked, that starch breaks down instantly and floods your bloodstream with glucose. Because parsnips are often roasted or boiled until very soft, the cooking process raises the index further. There is limited research specifically on parsnips and diabetes, but the data we have is alarming. When parsnips are included in mixed dishes, they contribute a disproportionate amount to the glycemic load. Here is what makes parsnips especially dangerous for the unsuspecting consumer. Nobody warns you about them, and they are rarely found on typical foods to avoid lists. They show up in healthy vegetable recipes, leading people to believe they are making good choices. Then their blood sugar spikes, and they have absolutely no idea why it happened. The way parsnips are typically prepared makes the problem significantly worse for your metabolism. Roasted with olive oil until caramelized means the sugars are literally browning and concentrating. Mashed into soups, you are breaking down the structure even more, making starches accessible. My recommendation is to avoid parsnips entirely if you have diabetes or insulin issues. They offer no significant nutritional advantage over truly low glycemic vegetables to justify the risk. The blood sugar impact is simply too severe to justify including them in your regular diet. Score: 8 out of 10, denoting an extremely high glycemic index and a hidden danger. Vegetable number 1 is white potatoes, the absolute worst vegetable for blood sugar control. Specifically russet potatoes, though all white varieties are problematic, are the primary offenders here. Here is the shocking truth that doctors do not emphasize enough to their patients. White potatoes particularly have a very high glycemic load that rivals sugary treats. As a result, a baked white potato can raise blood sugar even more than a glazed donut. Let that sink in. A vegetable can spike you more than a donut. The numbers are brutal, as potatoes fall into the high glycemic index category. A cup of them can affect your blood sugar in the same way a can of soda would. The glycemic index of russet potatoes ranges from 85 to 111 depending on preparation. That is off the charts and dangerous for anyone managing insulin resistance. 1 medium-baked russet potato contains about 37 grams of carbohydrates. However, the real problem is that your body digests these carbs faster than other complex carbs. These broken-down carbs flood your blood with sugar, causing a massive physiological reaction. This makes your blood sugar spike quickly, often reaching dangerous levels within minutes. Let me explain the mechanism so you understand why this happens internally. Potatoes are almost pure starch, and when cooked, that starch gelatinizes and breaks down. Your digestive enzymes, specifically amylase, attack that gelatinized starch and convert it to glucose minutes later. That glucose enters your bloodstream in a massive wave, overwhelming your system. Consumption of foods with high levels of amylopectin elicits a rapid spike in blood glucose levels. This is undesirable for individuals who are pre-diabetic, diabetic, or struggling with obesity. Potatoes are loaded with amylopectin, which is the rapidly digested form of starch. Here's what makes potatoes uniquely catastrophic compared to other foods on this list. The cooking method makes them even worse, turning them into highly efficient sugar delivery systems. When potatoes are heated, the starch becomes more digestible, raising blood sugar levels further. Baking a potato at high heat creates the highest possible glycemic impact. Mashing potatoes breaks down the cell walls completely, making the starch instantly accessible. The research on potatoes and diabetes is damning and impossible to ignore. One study found that women who ate large amounts of potatoes raised their diabetes risk. Another study found an 11% increase in diabetes risk with each daily serving. White rice and potatoes have similar effects, acting like straight sugar in the body. Here is the kicker. The glycemic index of pure mashed potato was measured at 108. That is as high as you can get, considering pure glucose is rated at 100. Mashed potatoes are metabolically worse than eating pure glucose directly. Clinical studies show exactly how bad this is for patients monitoring their levels. When people with diabetes eat potatoes, their blood sugar spikes within 30 minutes. It stays elevated for 2 to 3 hours, causing prolonged metabolic stress. That prolonged elevation causes inflammation, damages blood vessels, and accelerates diabetic complications. Here is what is really happening inside your body when you eat a potato. Within 15 minutes, glucose starts flooding into your bloodstream at an alarming rate. By 30 minutes, your blood sugar has spiked by 60 to 100 points. Your pancreas releases massive amounts of insulin to try to handle this emergency. But if you are over 60, your cells do not respond well to that insulin. So, the glucose stays in your blood, causing damage to your organs. By 60 to 90 minutes, you are at peak blood sugar levels. For many people with diabetes, that means readings in the 200s or even 300s. All of this chaos comes from a single healthy vegetable you ate for dinner. Your blood vessels are being damaged, your kidneys are working overtime, and your eyes are affected. And the aftermath is just as bad as the initial spike. After 2 to 3 hours, that massive insulin response finally brings your blood sugar down. But it often overshoots, dropping you below normal levels and causing a crash. This creates hypoglycemia, which triggers intense hunger and cravings for more carbohydrates. This low level of blood sugar tends to stimulate hunger and the desire to consume. So you end up in a blood sugar roller coaster that is hard to escape. You spike from the potato, crash from the insulin, get hungry, and eat more carbs. This cycle destroys your metabolic health and makes managing diabetes nearly impossible. But here is what makes potatoes truly unforgivable for diabetics in the modern diet. They are everywhere: French fries, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, potato salad, and hash browns. Potato soup, chips, and restaurant sides ensure they are impossible to avoid. They are cheap, filling, and addictive, making them a staple in most households. Doctors have been terrible at warning people about this specific danger. They say, eat more vegetables without differentiating between healthy broccoli and dangerous potatoes. They tell people to watch portion sizes without explaining that even a small potato is too much. The research is clear that high potato consumption may lead to sharp rises in glucose. This results in beta cell dysfunction or exhaustion, eventually leading to type 2 diabetes. Your pancreas literally wears out from trying to handle the glucose load from repeated potato consumption. Now, before you completely despair, let me tell you about one way to mitigate this. There is a method to make potatoes slightly less catastrophic, backed by real science. Results showed that chilled potatoes elicited significant reductions in glucose and insulin spikes. Cooling cooked potatoes creates resistant starch, which is a starch that resists digestion. When you cook a potato, refrigerate it for 12 hours, and then reheat it. You increase the resistant starch content by 2 to 3 times using this method. This resistant starch travels to your large intestine where gut bacteria ferment it. Instead of being absorbed as glucose, it feeds your gut microbiome. The insulin and glucose responses were significantly lower after eating the chilled potato. Clinical studies show this can reduce the blood sugar spike by 25 to 40%. But here is the hard truth about this preparation method that you must accept. Even with this method, potatoes are still problematic for a diabetic diet. The resistant starch helps, but it does not eliminate the issue entirely. You are still getting a significant carbohydrate load and spiking your blood sugar. It is just not as drastic as eating a fresh, hot potato. Most people do not prepare potatoes this way. They eat them fresh and hot. This gives them the full glycemic catastrophe that damages their health. Score: 10 out of 10, representing maximum blood sugar damage. Avoid completely or use resistant starch preparation only in tiny portions. Now let me tell you exactly how to implement this knowledge into your life. First, eliminate white potatoes from your diet completely unless using the cooling method. Limit yourself to a quarter cup, as the impact is too severe otherwise. Second, drastically limit your consumption of parsnips, beets, and sweet potatoes. If you eat them, keep portions to a quarter cup maximum and always pair them. Use significant amounts of protein and healthy fats to slow digestion and reduce the spike. Third, treat corn, peas, and winter squashes as carbohydrate sources, not free vegetables. Count them in your carb totals for the day and do not pile them on. Fourth, focus your vegetable intake on truly low glycemic options that are safe. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, and lettuce are excellent choices for your health. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts are also perfect options. Non-starchy vegetables like zucchini, bell peppers, and cucumbers will not spike your blood sugar. These vegetables provide incredible nutrition without the metabolic cost of starchy ones. Fifth, use the food pairing strategy we discussed to protect your levels. Never eat any starchy vegetable alone. Always combine it with protein and fat. This dramatically reduces the glycemic impact of the meal you are consuming. The glycemic index of pure mashed potato dropped from 108 to 54 when paired. Sixth, apply the food sequencing principle to further manage your glucose response. Eat your protein and non-starchy vegetables first, then wait 10 minutes. If you are going to eat any starchy vegetable, eat it last in the meal. This can reduce peak glucose by up to 70%, which is a massive improvement. Seventh, never eat starchy vegetables at dinner or late at night. Your insulin sensitivity is lowest in the evening, making spikes worse. The same vegetable that causes a moderate spike at lunch will cause a massive one at dinner. Front-load any starchy vegetables to breakfast or early lunch to minimize the damage. Within 3 days of making these changes, you will notice your energy is more stable. Within a week, your fasting blood sugar will start dropping to healthier levels. Within 2 weeks, you will see measurable improvements in your post-meal glucose readings. Within a month, your A1C will begin moving in the right direction. But consistency is everything when trying to manage a chronic condition like this. You cannot eat a baked potato one night and expect your blood sugar to stay controlled. One white potato can spike your blood sugar for 3 to 4 hours. It can take 24 hours for your body to fully recover from the inflammation. Do not make these critical errors that undermine your progress and health. First, do not assume that because something is a vegetable, it is automatically good for diabetes. We just proved that 7 vegetables are blood sugar disasters waiting to happen. Second, do not fall for the trap that natural means healthy. Potatoes are natural, yet they are still catastrophic for blood sugar management. Natural does not mean safe for diabetics, and you must remember that distinction. Third, do not ignore portion sizes, as they matter enormously with starchy vegetables. Even supposedly better options like sweet potatoes will spike you if you eat a whole one. Fourth, do not eat these vegetables alone or as your main dish. The strategy of pairing with protein and fat is essential, not optional. Fifth, do not prepare these vegetables in ways that increase their glycemic impact. Pureeing, mashing, overcooking, and adding sugars all make the problem significantly worse. Finally, do not keep eating these vegetables just because you have always eaten them. Your blood sugar does not care about tradition or comfort. It responds to biochemistry. Here is what this really comes down to regarding your long-term health. Your body wants to maintain stable blood sugar and your cells want to respond. But they need you to stop overloading them with high glycemic vegetables. For decades, you have been told that vegetables are universally healthy for everyone. You were told that if you just ate more vegetables, your diabetes would improve. That has been a dangerous oversimplification that has likely hurt your progress. Some vegetables protect you, while others significantly impact your health negatively. Higher intake of starchy vegetables is associated with greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Unlike non-starchy vegetables, which offer benefits, the science is clear that the vegetable matters. Your great-grandparents did not eat potatoes at every single meal. They did not have access to year-round sweet potatoes and corn like we do. They ate what was seasonal, and they ate significantly smaller portions. We have created a food culture where starchy vegetables are treated like free foods. They are not free foods, but there are ways to manage them. For those who cannot totally eliminate potatoes, I have more information coming. In the next video, I explain how you can eat bread, rice, and potatoes safely. I will show you how to do this without the blood sugar spikes happening. If you believe everyone deserves access to real health information, please share this. Do not accept fear-mongering from supplement companies. Share this with seniors who need it. Only those who profit from your confusion will refuse to share this vital message.